Welcome to the first ever St. John's Black Student Panel. I'm the host for today. I'm Josh. I'm a second year HSPS, which stands for Human, Social and Political Sciences student, specializing in politics and international relations. I'm also the BME officer on the St. John's JCR, which is essentially our student committee for the college, who essentially represents the views of the students towards college. So I'd like to introduce the other panelists here today. I'll start by asking Chantel to introduce herself. Could you all kindly say your name, subject, and an interesting maybe fact about yourself. Thanks.
Hello everyone, my name's Chantel. I'm a 6th year medical student now. I know, terrifying. Interesting fact about me. In my first year of uni, I took up ballroom and Latin dancing.
Amazing. I actually forgot my interesting fact. One interesting thing about me, I'd say, is I do spoken word poetry. Cool. So I'll ask Michael to introduce himself next.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm a 5th year medical student. And I guess an interesting fact about me is probably that I actually really like playing pasta, like just on its own, nothing else. Just raw.
I think you might be on your own there, but moving on, Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm also a medical student and I'm in my 4th year. And an interesting fact about me is that during my time at uni in 1st year, I started to learn how to hurdle. And now I am the squad leader for hurdles. I've learned it for 3 years. And yeah, so there's progress being made.
It's amazing. Wow. And David.
Hi, I'm David. In keeping with the other panelists, I'm a 3rd year medic. A fun fact about me, I like to play rugby in my spare time.
Nice. Amazing. I didn't actually figure out that we had so many medics. That's amazing. Also, we're going to be joined hopefully slightly later on by Tony, who just graduated and is not a medic like myself. So be good to get a bit of variety also there. Great. So swiftly moving on. The first question that's been asked is, how did you handle the transition from year 12 to year 13? And have you got any management tips?
See, that seems like such a long time ago, but for me personally, especially I feel like it might be quite a bit different because of COVID. However, from year 12 to 13, the first thing I tried to do before the school year started is kind of have my syllabus written down, and so I know what I actually need to learn for the next year, because year 13 moves so quickly, and so it's good to start just maybe the week before school, or the day before school starts, and we're just trying to have a little idea of what you need to cover in this year and what you need to go back on. I think that's quite helpful.
Definitely. Chantel?
Well, you're really out of my age here. Year 12 was a long time ago. For me, the transition, I think for me in the year 13, you had a lot more free time or more study time, study periods, or in my school you did anyway, I think. So my advice would be to just really make use of those hours of free study, because it's very easy to be like, oh, nice, free period, go home, work hard in them. I would recommend, and try not to let the stress get too much, because that will not help you in the slightest. So have a good way that you use to de-stress, whether it's going to play sports or whatever. That's important.
David, Mike?
I'm also quite old as well, so it's been a while. But what I will say is, I think it's really important to have a plan. because I think a lot of people that can get very stressed in year 13, oh, you know, I need to get to the best grades for my university, and you know, they work almost too hard too early on. So it's really important that yes, you need to work hard throughout the year, but to make sure that you're almost staggering your progress, to make sure that you are kind of hitting those important kind of checkpoints in the year, but you're not overworking yourself to the point where, you know, you get to when our exams you get to you know, April, May,
June,
and then you
yeah,
know,
May.
you almost peaked too early because you know you're working your butt off in January. So yeah, just make sure you take the year as a whole and, you know, hit those important checkpoints for your academic learning.
A bit similar to Michael's, yeah, pace yourself. Like the first half of year 13 might be, you know, predominantly applying to university and your interviews and stuff, but make sure that you can keep on top of the work that you're set. And then sort of in the second half, you know, January, that's when you want to make a plan for starting revision, how you're going to get it like done. You want to make sure that your notes are in order at that point. And then perhaps February, you can start like just lightly going over some topics that you maybe did in year 12. And then, you know, sort of by the time you get towards, you know, taking your exams, you realize that you've actually covered everything. And then you're kind of just going over past papers, which are a pretty good resource for exam revision.
Yeah, no, completely. And just to add, I would definitely just say use summer as wisely as you can, and use it as a way of, I mean, getting ahead, but also just sort of preparing for what's coming in the following year. So what I did over the summer between year 12 and year 13, was essentially perfect my personal statement, which basically meant that in the month leading up to the Oxford deadline, my personal statement was more or less ready, and I was just sort of polishing it and adding the final touches, which meant that I could focus more so on actual course content and yeah, essentially just consolidating everything that I'd learned in year 12. Cool. So moving on to the next question. It's the classic: how did you come to choose Cambridge over Oxford or other universities?
I mean,
Feel
I
free
have a
to
pretty interesting
answer.
story, but oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying. So feel free to answer as you wish.
I was going to say, I actually didn't have a choice. Cambridge was my only offer, unfortunately. I'm joking.
Oh wow, that's quite rare.
Same with me.
Wow.
Oh really?
Yeah, I didn't make it to medical office, so.
But no, fortunately, like, you know, I'm very happy to be here. But I think what made me apply to Cambridge over Oxford was, if I'm being honest, I got more of a sense of kind of better diversity in Cambridge overall, and also and this might be very wrong because I've never been to Oxford, but I felt like Oxford was very kind of more traditional in a sense, and yeah, I'd heard rumors about people wearing gowns to exams and things like that, and dressing up and like I wanted, you know, to taste a bit of that, but I didn't want it to completely consume my university experience. So I thought Cambridge would give me like a holistic university experience.
Mm. Nice.
For me, I quite liked how Cambridge was a small, like, I don't know if it's considered a town or a city, but it's a lot smaller to where I live in East London. And so I quite like the idea of like going away to a uni in a place which was like more like quaint, and rather than like an actual like big city like Oxford. I just thought it'd be like a different experience. Also, it's quite close to where I live. It's only a 40-minute drive versus Oxford's a lot further. So I knew that if I wanted to visit my family, it'd be quite a quick journey. But also, I just quite like the look of Cambridge. Like Michael, I think maybe I've been to Oxford maybe once when I was younger, so I don't really know what it was like. And so I've only really seen Cambridge, and that's why I was like, I want to apply here.
Nice.
I think I chose Cambridge over Oxford because of the distance. So Oxford is closer to where I live, and I kind of didn't really want my mum to like come and see me in uni all the time. But Cambridge is an hour and a half from where I live, so it's not like a crazy distance. So there was that element, and then also I was just more familiar with Cambridge because I have a family member who's also at St John's, so like he kind of like helped me with the whole like university choosing process, and like basically just helped me with my application in general as well.
For me, I actually went on a trip to Cambridge in my year 10, I think it was year 10, and I came and I just really liked the place, so that probably greatly influenced it. And then I also went on a summer school to St John's actually, which is probably why I chose John's in particular. And although I went to Oxford as well for like a day trip, you know, when you're applying, I just liked the feel of Cambridge more because, like Christina said, Oxford's a lot bigger, I think, whereas Cambridge is very small and quaint. So it was more, I didn't really do enough research on both of them, but I just made my mind. I was like, well, Cambridge it is. So.
All right. So I mean, for me, it's funny because I visited Oxford, I think, more times than I'd visited Cambridge. I think I visited Oxford maybe in total like 3 or 4 times, and Cambridge, I think, once. But when it came to actually choosing a subject, I felt like HSPS was the one I leant most towards, and PPE was the closest equivalent. And yeah, I just didn't really want to do maths at all. Even though I enjoy economics, I think PPE would have been too mathematical heavy for me. So I very sort of, it was a very easy option in terms of choosing Cambridge. And also I remember coming in year 12 for the King's BME Open Day, and George the Poet was one of the panelists. And me doing sort of spoken word poetry, I found it really interesting and a very engaging talk. And obviously realizing that he was an alumni of Cambridge, I know for me, it's just a little bit of a personal connection there. And so I don't know how much that sort of changed things, but it was definitely something that, you know, made me lean slightly more towards Cambridge. So next question, how did you decide which college to apply to, and how many colleges did you research about before picking one? I'll actually start this one off. So if I'm being perfectly honest, I didn't do much research about colleges. My sixth form provided a resource called Unifrog, which is an amazing resource that I'd recommend to your schools if you don't already have access to it. It essentially allows you to pick a university and pick a course and sort of compare them all to each other through lots of different metrics like cost of living, I think just sort of overall university rating, etc. What's really good as well is they have this resource that allows you to compare Oxbridge colleges as well. So I can literally put 4 or 5 different colleges at Cambridge into this resource, and it would compare lots of different things like rent, cost of food, etc., etc. And I think John's sort of, I can't remember on which metric it was, but it just seemed to come out on top for me. Also, I had a few friends at Cambridge, one at St John's, Tony, who again will hopefully be joining this panel later. And I essentially gave him a few criteria that I wanted to meet, that I wanted my college to meet, and he recommended St John's. So I was just literally like, yep, I'll put St John's down. So that's how I chose St John's.
Well, for me, it's a kind of different thing. I didn't really compare the colleges. It's more so like when I was going around, so I went to an open day. I like to like talk to students, to other medical students, and kind of get the vibe of what they are like, because I thought if the medical students are happy in that college, then I'll probably be happy there. And so when I came to John's, I met this one medical student who I is probably now graduated, and he was so passionate about the college, and he was telling me about all these different funds and how I'd be given like money to like travel and like to learn languages, and how there are all these opportunities and how they have grants for sports. And he really was so passionate about it. And I was like, he kind of sold John's to me. And even though other colleges, there are also medical students who like seemed excited about the college, I feel like he was just like a bit above that. And so and also afterwards I like researched John's a bit more, and I had a look around. I had amazing grounds, and I think that kind of sold me.
I mean, this is a pretty hot take, but I actually think objectively John's is pretty much the best college at Cambridge. I'll explain why. I'll provide evidence. So, I mean, firstly, you want to come to Cambridge, you probably also want to experience some of the more scenic aspects and the views and things. John's has all of that. So check there. Are you, sporty? Do you want to get involved in a variety of different sports at a fairly high level and have access to really good sporting areas like our pitches, our astro, even our squash courts? We've got all of that. And then the funding as well. If you come from like a low-income family and you need additional support, John's has you covered for that as well. John's is pretty much the most generous college out of every other college in the at Cambridge when it comes to supporting their students. And then I guess the only other thing is the size, which means that for medical students, you get to have accommodation provided by John's for the entire 6 years, and you get to live in a range of different environments as well. But if the size intimidates you because you want to be in a smaller college, which has less people, you want to feel like you know everyone, I will say that the advantage of having a bigger college means that you actually have more exposure to people, so you can find your niche more quickly, because during the kind of first maybe month or so when you start university, you are mainly socializing with people within your college because those are the people you meet first. So it's a lot easier if there are more people to find people who are similar to you when you might not be afforded such a luxury at a smaller college. So I honestly think that John's it has all bases covered. When you're thinking about a college to apply for.
So I applied for John's because, as I said earlier, I went on a summer school, which was really good, for a week in John's, and it happened to be John's was the only college doing a medical summer school, so that's why I was there. And then when I was here, I got to experience the buttery, which is like the dining hall, and all their accommodation, and do some society, so dancing. And I just really loved the college then. I thought, wow, it's like home. It's like Hogwarts. It was so good. So that really influenced my decision. So then when I came to applying, I didn't really look at other colleges, because I was like, well, I was kind of settled on John's because it had a lot of great facilities. And again, a medic who would be graduated now anyway as well, he was on the summer school, like showing us around. He was so passionate about it. So I was like, okay, this is a good place to be.
For me, I think I had a choice. I was thinking between two colleges, St John's and I think Pembroke. And the reason for Pembroke was just because it was closer to where like our lectures are for the first 2 years. So I thought, I could, roll out of bed and be in the lecture hall in like a few minutes. But that's not like, as in, you can still do that even in John's. It's a central college. You can be in your lectures quite quickly. And for me, the fact that it was quite sporty and big as well, definitely impacted my decision. The fact that it's big, you can find sort of people that have common interests with you. And even still, you can discover like sort of new things, like by meeting new people, and they might participate in a specific activity that you kind of like the interest, like you're kind of interested in, you like the look of it, but you've never really kind of wanted to like dive into it yet, and then they can introduce you into it, and then you've got another friendship there or whatever. So yeah, that for me, the fact that it was a big college, sporty, and central were the reasons that I chose John's.
Next question being, what would you say? Oh, sorry, I'm skipping one. How does diversity in St John's compare to other colleges in Cambridge?
I think because of the size of John's, just because it has such a large student body, it will be more diverse. However, I don't know the actual stats and can't compare it to other colleges off the top of my head. But I just know because it's bigger, it does have a more diverse student population. But if anyone else knows the stats.
I think it would be, I mean, I don't know if you can, but it'd be important to clarify what diversity we're referring to. Are you referring
I think more so diversity in all forms.
Okay.
I think it's, yeah.
All right, sure. Well, then I think that I'll just reiterate what Christina said. Like, because of the size of the college, it is one of the more diverse colleges in terms of just having a lot of people from different backgrounds, different races, religions, etc. And what's really good, at least for as long as I've been here, is that there's been a kind of a concerted effort to really increase both diversity and access in particular. I've been involved in a lot of access schemes, going to different schools in low-income areas and stuff like that to really like encourage people to apply. And we've seen the effects of it. At least this is anecdotally, but like from my experience, like I see now a lot more people from different backgrounds and a lot more people from different races and religions, etc., that I didn't see before in my 5 years of being here. So I definitely think like it's heading even more so in the right direction.
Completely agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think even just looking in the year below, it's probably a lot more diverse than my year, which suggests that Johns are taking sort of the right steps to improving diversity.
Amazing. Christina, did you want to anything? I think, sorry, did you?
Yeah, I already said.
sorry, apologies. Cool. Yeah, I mean, just mirroring everything that's already been said, I think John's is diversity has increased sort of positively over the last few years, and there are lots more schemes, some of which I'll come on to talk about a bit later, that are in progress or about to launch, that are aimed at increasing several different forms of diversity, whether it's diversity from different parts of the country to diversity in terms of race. So yeah, progress is definitely being made. Next question, I think we've already sort of touched on it a bit in a previous response, but what would you say is one thing that makes Johns stand out compared to other colleges? I think if you could maybe just sort of one or 2 points each would be fine.
I guess I do like to stress this, but I think it's underplayed. The financial support that you get from Johns is actually second to none in pretty much any other college. From the resources for your course, for example, that you can get to funds for you to potentially study abroad. There are just so many, I couldn't even list them all. It's actually best you go and look at the Johns website yourself and really investigate like what financial support you can have, even if you're not necessarily from a low-income family. I think is something that a lot of people don't properly appreciate when they're applying to college or applying even just to university, how the university can assist them in their daily living and in their course. And I just really want to stress that Johns is the best college at supporting its students financially.
Anything else anyone might have wanted to add, or if not, we can move on to the next question.
To follow on from Michael, I completely agree with like the funding. John's is extremely generous. Also, I think John's has amazing accommodation over a wide range of like a price bracket. Even like if it's at the lower end, like even cheaper accommodation is still really good. And I think the rent cost is also a lot cheaper than compared to other colleges. So you don't have to spend as much to get an amazing room. And there's such like a wide variety of rooms, even like in like the really old courts or like the newer like Cripps building. You can live outside of colleges and college in houses, which is still like very central. So I think that's also like a really good thing that I didn't really appreciate until I got here.
I just want to say I agree with both Michael and Christina. There's a really important parts and big points to make because people don't realise that when applying. But even just something as simple as the aesthetics of John's, like the whole facilities where you take formal dinners, the sports field and like squash courts, and having the library and all these the features of John's are like pretty high tier. They're really good. They're accessible, and it's just like, yeah, really aesthetically pleasing as well as being supportive in a lot of areas.
One thing I'll add is, apart from the standard college families, which is essentially when you get into John's, you're paired with someone in the year above, and you essentially become part of what's called a college family. So you have a mum, a dad, and a sibling, or a mum and a mum, dad and dad. And I think that's very, very helpful in terms of you sort of becoming familiar with older people in the college and just essentially having someone in the year above to sort of look out for you. We also have BME families, LGBT families as well. So yeah, lots of sort of different forms of support and pastoral support in that sense as well. Anything else? Cool. Moving on. Have you got any advice on how to speak about personal lived experiences in your personal statement?
So go on.
No, sorry.
That's a good question. I have some personal experience with doing so actually, and the way I kind of tried to incorporate it in my personal statement was that I didn't just offer kind of an information dump, but I had it have, meaning. So it was in context. So if it was something potentially a traumatic even experience I might have had in my life, what was it that I learned from it, and how is it, contributing to the person I am right now and the person who's wanting to apply for this course. So I don't know if that's too non-specific, but yeah, just if you're going to include your lived experience, I think that's fine. Just remember the whole point of the personal statement is to constantly reiterate how you've become shaped as the person you are right now. And saying your experience must always be followed by how that experience has helped you.
I agree. So I think putting a personal experience, obviously if you want to, is a really powerful way to grab a reader's attention, especially if it's not particularly, maybe not directly related to the course you're applying to. It's something that's like, okay, but like Michael said, I think it's very fair to say these things, but what people are looking for when they're reading your personal statement is to look at how you've reflected on this, how this experience has changed you or helps you grow in some sort of way, and how that can relate to the course. So it's not just about putting down loads of life experiences, because people or the interviewers maybe aren't going to look at that as good if as someone who puts down one life experience but really expands on how that's changed them, how that's helped them, how that's helped them grow, why it makes them want to apply for medicine or whatever. So it's really important to relate that back in some sort of way rather than just say it and then move on.
Just to add to that, actually, a really good format to use when talking about examples, whether it's personal lived experiences or even if it's maybe work experience, for example, is talk about the example and then link it to, and then talk about what the key quality was or what was the key learning experience, and then reflect on it, and then link it back to the subject. I think that's the most important part, because at the end of the day, you're applying for an academic discipline, and that's sort of the most sort of key part of what your statement should be about. So always link it back to the subject that you're applying for, is the advice I'd give. Anyone else wanted to say anything? Cool. Have you got any advice on making your application stand out?
For my, so is it application or just personal statement, or?
I think application, just broadly speaking, so including your statement, but any other thing else pertaining to application. I think you can even talk about interview as well. Yeah, because I guess that's part of the application process. So any maybe interview tips as well?
Well, for the interview, I think my best tip is to, especially for the John's ones, is to think aloud and also go with your gut instinct, because especially if they ask you, for example, what is this, they show you a scan or something, you might have in in the back of your head an idea, but you don't want to say it because you're afraid it might be wrong, because you're like, where does it, like, what's the foundation of it? But sometimes it's just best to say what you think, because they don't know if you don't say what's in your mind. So I think that's my best tip. Yeah, obviously, like, take a few seconds to like think over it, but also don't be shy to just put forward your opinion.
And just to comment on that as well, because thinking out loud is really important to do an interview, because sometimes they're not necessarily wanting you to get the right answer. They're looking at how you think, how you process information, how you get to the answer that you get to, as opposed to whether you get to the right answer. So I think it's really important to think out loud, and they're not necessarily going to like mark you down if the answer is wrong. If the steps you're taking are really logical, they can see it, because some of the stuff they will show you in an interview, they may not expect you to know anyway, because why would you have been exposed to some medical stuff if you've never been, you know, if your family's not medical and you've just studied at your A levels? So that's really important. And as for the application process, again, it's been a long time. And I think UCAS is very like set, as in you put your grades in, that sort of thing. And for me, it was more the personal statement where you can have a bit of pizzazz and like show your personality, wow them a little bit. So take time to like write your personal statement and be as efficient with the words as possible, because I know a trap that I fell into initially was just sort of waffling on, and my word count was used up and I hadn't actually said many great things or got my point across. So I think just take your time with that, and really, like, you know, it's not all about having a show-stopping, you know, big story to put in there. But again, if you can say something that's kind of powerful, makes you think, oh yeah, and then relate it really well to you, to your course, to why I want to be here, I think that's more powerful.
Completely agree. And regarding the personal statement, there are some Cambridge students who run a platform called Team Upside. They're on Instagram, and I'm sure they're on Twitter as well. And they're currently running an amazing series called Getting Personal, which is essentially a series that covers people break down their personal statements and they give advice. And I've actually done one for politics, which is, I think, coming out tomorrow. But essentially, most subjects are covered, so definitely do check that out. And they're giving out some really, really amazing advice. And I'm sure you're able to reach out to sort of people who've taken part in the series as well, in order to get extra information as well, if you might like to. So moving on from the application process, questions to starting uni and general questions relating to university. Someone's asked, what were your main worries about? Sorry, what were your main worries when going to university?
I think for me, it was finding what sort of, this might be cheesy, like what sort of person I want to be, like what I wanted to do like extracurricularly, because I knew I didn't want to just focus on medicine. I wanted to have like extra interests that I'd like delve into. And so in the first time, I spent like a lot of time trying to like figure out what I wanted to do. I tried like lots of different clubs, lots of different things. And I think that's such a good thing, is just to try out a lot, because eventually I did find that I really liked French, really like athletics. And so, yeah, I think that was something I was worried about initially. But to handle that worry, I think if you just try out as many societies as possible, then it should be fine.
Just for time purposes, I'm just going to rephrase that question slightly. What was one worry before starting university, and how did you overcome it? Yeah, whoever wants to answer that, please.
I think we all, well, I'll speak for myself actually, like the worry of the kind of academic step up from your A levels to university, and you don't want to kind of be left behind, especially at a place like Cambridge where you're seeing everyone's like Einstein and really, really smart, which they are. So, and I guess to combat that, what I did was I looked into, I don't know, it probably doesn't exist anymore, but there was like a reading list for medical students, which you could read over like before, like during the summer holidays before the course started. And also, I guess I just continued to explore my own kind of medical interests and just hope that they coincided with the course. But yeah, generally, I think most courses will drop some like kind of extra material for students over the summer if they are really that keen to feel like they know what they're doing.
Worry for me was whether I'd find people that kind of had similar interests to me. And I think that's just goes back to the benefit of John's being a big college. I was able to, kind of find people with common interests, whether through sport, through music, through like any other kind of extracurricular activity. And yeah, that it kind of really helped me settle down quite quickly into college life.
For me, obviously a lot of the worries I had were already mentioned, but another, I'm being completely honest, worry was that Cambridge is going to live up to the stereotype that a lot of people have of it, where it's a very posh place and everyone's very not proper, what's the word, like it's just very quiet, there's not a lot going on socially. And everyone was like, yeah, the clubs are going to be really small, you're not going to have a great time, because obviously a big part of coming to uni is freshers, and obviously that will probably change because of corona, but it's still going to be a really sociable time for everyone. So I was very worried that it wasn't going to live up to other universities which will have a big social background, but I think I got over that when I came here. And yeah, maybe it's a little bit different, the clubs are a bit smaller, but it is what you make of it, and you can still have a really good time, and the people are still really nice. Not everyone's going to be, as Michael says, like an Einstein who you can't really talk to. The people are lovely, so that was a big relief for me. And I helped going on Facebook pages, like the fresher pages, and getting to know your peers before you came. So
I definitely recommend the fresher pages. Those are great in terms of getting to know people. Cool. Anyone wanted to add anything? Cool. Moving on. Do you feel comfortable as a Black student in Cambridge? What were your pre-existing ideas about Cambridge before you were here as a student? I'll start by saying, I mean, generally speaking, I do feel comfortable as a Black student at Cambridge. That's not to say that at times people might say stuff that's slightly ignorant, But I think that we kind of have to understand that for a lot of people, you know, they might have come from maybe less multicultural areas, and they might not necessarily realize that asking you a question, maybe relating to your culture or maybe a feature about you, might come across as, you know, slightly offensive. But it's just the case where you say, hey, you know, I didn't really appreciate that because so and so, and it's just more of a learning experience. Um, there are sort of societies such as the ACS, which stands for the African Caribbean Society, where, you know, you often find that there are people who kind of have similar sort of cultural interests to you. You listen to the same music a lot of the time. But that's not to say that as a Black student, you know, it's a homogenous experience. You know, we're all different. We like different things, but generally speaking, there is sort of, I mean, I haven't necessarily found it to be the case that, you know, as a Black student, I don't enjoy my university experience any less than if I were to be any other race. But yeah, I mean, again, you know, if anything sort of bothers you, there are sort of lots of support mechanisms. You know, you can sort of speak to other people. You can speak to. There are lots of different ways of reporting any sort of incidents that might sort of come about. And yeah, but just generally speaking, I personally haven't necessarily found it, any sort of negative sort of overall experiences purely based on race. I understand that might not necessarily be the case for everyone, but I can only speak from my personal experience.
Yeah, to add on to that, I've also found it comfortable being a Black student in Cambridge. I actually found that I'd met a lot more other Black people around Cambridge purely because there's a smaller group. And so through ACS, the Afro-Caribbean Society, I've had the chance to meet all these amazing people, and maybe potentially at a uni which is more diverse, I might not have joined a specific cultural society. And so I'm quite thankful for that opportunity. And I think also overall, I think I've just had like a good support network and made like a good group of friends, like a diverse group. And so I think it's easy to feel comfortable in Cambridge. Yeah.
I would agree with everything that everyone's just said. Like it's very easy to feel comfortable. Like there are, as Josh was saying, loads of societies to kind of make you feel at home, even just, you know, regardless of just skin color. What I will say from my own personal experience, and this might apply to some of you, this is the only reason I'm going to say it, is that I grew up in a pretty much 90% Black area in London where I went to school. And so actually moving to Cambridge felt, even though Cambridge necessarily wasn't like severely lacking in diversity, it felt like a massive culture shock to me to go from 90% like Black and Asian to maybe 10% or 20%. And it took me a while to adjust at first. But I actually think in hindsight, like it's an adjustment that needed to happen, because actually, you know, in the rest of the UK and even just in life in general, like it's always good to have new experiences. And so even if you're coming from a place where, you know, everyone in your area is Black or Asian, or it's almost anti-diverse, if that makes sense. I don't know how to describe it, but like, yeah, like coming to a place where you might become the minority where you're not used to is actually a really good like learning experience of just operating in those kind of spaces, because you will need to learn how to function in spaces where you might not necessarily be the majority. But that's really only applying to, like I said, my lived experience where I grew up in Enfield, went to a predominantly Black secondary school, and yeah, a bit of a culture shock for me.
Anyone else wanted to add anything? Cool. Moving on to the next question. What's one way you de-stress?
Say deal with stress or stress.
De-stress,
Or
deal with
de-stress.
stress, de-stress. Maybe an activity that you do, just something that helps you relieve stress.
I love playing music. I play guitar, piano, play clarinet.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't sing, so don't ask me.
Flex.
But yeah, that's what I like to do to de-stress, and also to play football as well. I think it's nice to have like a sport, a group, or just any group activity outside your studies to help you kind of remove yourself from that bubble of academia.
Yeah, I always find that sport is a good de-stressor for me. I always find like at the end of the day working, I need to do something like get out, get moving, because I have all this like pent up energy. So it could be athletics, which I do. I also do college netball. I learnt lacrosse this weekend because I feel like I need another sport in there. So I just find like moving about and getting out in the sun, especially since it's so nice at the moment, that normally helps me de-stress. Also like seeing other people, having a good chat while you're like doing exercise. That's normally like a good way to de-stress.
David, Shanta?
Another thing, a thing that I started actually when I came to Cambridge is just going for a walk. I'd just be in the middle of revision, kind of start to feel a bit stressed, and I'd just take myself out, go for a walk through some different colleges, or maybe just go and sit on the backs just to just chill out for maybe an hour or so. So that was something that helped me out, aside from of course sports and going to the gym.
Yeah, I agree. I did a lot of sports when I was stressed with exams, but I also find just being with friends is really helpful. I currently live in a house of 7 medics, so although we're all kind of stressed with exams, it's nice having company. I think, yeah, underestimate being with people does really help.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, just to mirror everything that's been said, I think especially sport is a very big thing for me. I play football. That's my main sport. I actually sort of do a bit of athletics as well, but I haven't really got involved in the Cambridge scene. I think something I might pick up in second year actually. Um, one quick story. I remember one time I was in the library and I was quite stressed. It was quite late. I thought, you know what, I just want to go home. So I went home for the weekend, took the last train, and yeah, it was great. It came back rejuvenated. Wouldn't recommend doing that too often during term, but when you do need to, it's nice to just kind of separate yourself from sort of Cambridge in general. Maybe for a day or two, be very sort of helpful in terms of just alleviating stress. Cool. So moving on to the next question. What is the accommodation like at St. John's? Are there en suites and kitchens for undergraduates? Interesting. I'll start off by saying like the accommodation varies hugely. In the first year, most or a large amount of students live in crypts, which is some of the accommodation towards the back of college. I think probably the most recent sort of built accommodation. So the facilities are sort of amazing. Not to say that they aren't in other accommodations as well. You've got a gym nearby, and you've got the laundry suite very close by as well. So that was definitely a huge benefit of living by crypts. I mean, in crypts. There's also communal kitchens, which are great. And yeah, I mean, generally speaking, accommodation is sort of very nice, especially compared to some of the other sort of colleges I've visited. So yeah.
I am. Oh, go.
No, you can go.
I didn't live in crypts in first year because I was fifth from the bottom of the ballot. Good
No.
times. But that should be a good thing because even though I was in crypts, I was in a place called North Court, which is near the library area. So it's at the front of college. Crypts is like right at the back. So even though I didn't really get much choice in where I was going for first year, it was still a really nice accommodation. We didn't have a shared kitchen, it was like a set. So how it worked was, and this works for a couple of other areas in college, is you have a kitchenette, so it's quite small, but you have like a hob and a fridge and a sink and cupboards, and then you have a shower that you share with one other person, and then you have 2 different rooms, so they're separate. So that's what I was in first year, and I just want to relieve any stress. If you are at the bottom of the ballot, it's not the end of the world. It's still nice accommodation, and yeah, you then get to move around. So
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, can I quickly just hop in? So Tony's just joined us actually. Uh, Thank you very much for joining. Can I just ask that you just briefly introduce yourself, subject, and obviously you're graduating now, but maybe just a little interesting fact about yourself, maybe.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Tony. Literally just graduated from John's 2 months ago in HSPS, and I specialized in politics and international relations. And yeah, fun fact about myself, I was late because I was working with our investors for a company I've just started. So yeah, that's a fun fact about me. I build tech companies now.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you missed the question, but the question that we were just on was around accommodation at John's, and what it's like, and yeah, we're just talking a bit about that. So,
I feel like I have a pretty good view of the variety of the wonderful properties that St. John's College has to offer. In first year, I had a really nice room in Cripps E, right on the other side of where Josh just finished living in, and that was great. And we threw some parties in there that was good fun, and it was a shared kitchen. And most rooms in Cripps for freshers are pretty large. Second year, I was at the bottom of the ballot, like Chantal, and that was not a fun experience. I lived in a house with 7 other people. So again, like shared kitchen. There was a washing machine in the kitchen, and the shared bathroom. It wasn't an awful experience. The upside was the rent was pretty cheap, and John's is really good at subsidizing rent compared to other colleges. And then in third year, I was at the top of the ballot. I lucked out, and I got one of the elusive penthouses, which we put to good effect. Which is basically one of the rooms in Cripps some of the rooms in Cripps have 2 floors, and they lead out into the balcony. So if you get lucky, pray hard enough, you might get a penthouse one day.
Amazing. And can I just add that these parties that Tony refers to would have, of course, been approved by the dean as parties over, I think, 12 have to be, which most likely wouldn't be happening anytime soon due to COVID regulations, unfortunately. But hopefully when you guys apply and hopefully get in next year or maybe the year after, things will hopefully have improved. Moving, I think, Christina, were you cut off? Did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I was just following on, like, even if you end up near the bottom, so in second year, I ended up like near the bottom. So I went for a double set, which is where you have, you go with a friend, you share like a kitchen and a bathroom. And that actually worked out really well. Even though we were near the bottom, we still had really nice accommodation. It was really nice to have like a friend to live with who was always there with me. So I feel like even if you're at the top of the ballot, bottom of the ballot, you're always going to end up with like decent accommodation.
Amazing. Can we quickly talk about some of the clubs and societies that we were involved with in college?
Oh, in college?
Or still are, yeah.
Okay, so one that I'm involved in is the netball club. So we're actually really good, and the year that's just passed, I feel like we had a good chance of winning Cuppers, which is the intercollegiate sports event. However, because of COVID, we weren't able to do the final. So hopefully this year we'll go back and win. But that's been really enjoyable because it's across all different levels. You just have to trial. They have multiple teams. They also have like a mixed team, so boys and girls. So I would recommend trying out for the netball team.
Tony?
Sure. In college, I played for the Red Boys in my first and second year, which is the college rugby team, which has a pretty strong reputation for being one of the best, if not the best. Definitely historically has been the best in the university. In my first year, we won cuppers, which meant that we came first out of all college teams, which was a really nice experience. And like Red Boys definitely has a really strong family culture, and it tends to really define people's experience. And then also St. John's has an entrepreneur society, which doesn't meet frequently, but Innocent Smoothies, their founders went to John's and met at John's, and they came in my start of my third year and did a really good panel talk about their time at university and starting the business. So there's also some great stuff that alumni come back and share with students.
Chantel?
Same as Christina, when I was in undergrad, so my first 3 years, I did netball with Johns, but I did the mixed netball, so men and women play together, which I thought was really fun, especially because I'm short, so it was useful having some tall players on your team. But yeah, it's really good fun.
Nice. David, Mike, what you wanna?
Oh yeah, I basically just did football. My first 3 years, the college's first team. It was really a really good experience. And I can't say we won much, but
This season's been all right.
But there are some really good lads, really good guys. And it's nice now having Josh as part of the team as well to carry on my legacy. As we go forward. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did.
I think someone asked about the Black Boys, and can you just explain what that is? Because I think, from looking outside, looking in, it's a bit of an interesting term, but can you just explain what's meant by the Black Boys?
I had this very question when I first joined 5 years ago, when people were referring to themselves as the Black Boys. I was just looking around being like, this place is mad. But where it stems from, as Tony mentioned, the Red Boys. Red Boys is a rugby team, and they wear red, which is why they call the Red Boys. The Black Boys historically wore black, even though they don't really wear black anymore for their games or even their training kits. But historically,
I think it's most of the jumpers.
Oh yeah, well okay, they do have their black jumpers. To be fair enough. Yeah, so that's why they call the Black Boys. And then likewise, the cricketers, who usually wear white, also have white jumpers. I think I'll call the White Boys. I think they are. I'm pretty sure they are. So yeah, it's just traditionally what they wore.
Yeah. Nice. So we got a few more questions. Although this panel was meant to finish at 5, I hope you guys watching don't really mind us going over by 5 or 10 minutes, but we'll try to keep things going quite smoothly. Are there any mentorship programs available at St. John's that we can apply for to support us with applying? There are quite a few things coming up, and I definitely say look out on our social media platforms. In my role as BME officer, I'm launching a Be a Mentor scheme, which essentially aims to partner year 12 students who are applying to St. John's with a student at John's. So that's due to launch within the next couple of months. So again, keeping out on the social media platforms. But yeah, definitely there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline. So do keep an eye out for that. If there's anything else anyone else might be aware of that you might want to discuss.
I heard of this platform called the Bright Network,
Yes.
which a couple of my friends who live in this house are doing. And I think that's like an online mentorship scheme. I think it's with John's. I don't know the exact details because I haven't signed up yet. But that's also a mentorship scheme.
the BME campaign, I know, are also doing a mentorship scheme, also the ACS, the Afro-Caribbean Society. So just do check out the social media platforms. And yeah, they'll definitely sort of be up to date with all the latest opportunities. Next question being, what is St. John's doing to advance racial equality? Again, I think this is something that relates to the several schemes that are sort of in the pipeline. There's also a board that meets within college that is literally aimed at, tackling this issue. Tony, might you be aware of anything in particular?
Definitely, I think JCR and the kind of college council are pretty well abreast of the issue. In response to the brutal murder of George Floyd, the college did a great fundraiser towards the Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust, and the college matched donations, and that raised a few thousand. That's a great initiative. And then the college are now, in recent months, becoming much more proactive in listening to student voices. So I think a great thing about a college like ours is that it's steeped in history and tradition, but each student that comes has the opportunity to kind of voice their perspective, and the college is very responsive to that. So I know they have a few measures that they're putting in place, but it's early days to discuss them publicly. But anybody who wants to come to John should definitely rest assured that is a priority for the college, and that they are responsive to such issues.
Definitely. So thank you very much for that. Cool. What would you change about the uni if you could? I think maybe we should make this a bit more specific. And if there's anything about St. John's as well, please do mention them. So just keep it sort of brief as possible if you can. Maybe one thing.
Longer term times, I'd definitely appreciate if we had, especially for undergrad, they're 8 weeks long each term, and I feel like if they were just extended by a couple of weeks, it would alleviate quite a lot of stress, because you feel like you have to do so much in such a short amount of time. And I feel like if I just had a few more weeks, I'd be able to like enjoy Cambridge more and like go at a more like relaxed pace, even though it is feasible to get all the work done in 8 weeks and you have very long holidays. I feel like I wouldn't mind sacrificing a couple of weeks of holidays for like a longer term time.
Definitely agree there.
Double beds. Give us double beds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Us tall people.
Yeah.
David?
I mean, I would say laundry, maybe having more washing machines within college. So at the moment, everyone that's like living on the main site of college has to do their laundry in the basement of Crips. And there's like, I think maybe 8 or 9 like washing machines. And like they get full quite quickly during term. So, I kind of, there's been times where I just, stay up late and go and do my laundry at like 2 in the morning or 3. Just because, I need to get it done, otherwise I don't have any clothes. So I think that's maybe one thing, but.
Yeah, I would second that. I don't have any like major, like overarching pain points that I would change about my college or university experience. But I definitely think there's like a few little ones, like as David said with laundry, it's the most annoying thing when you come back to get your washing and someone just put your stuff on the bench because like they needed to use it. So definitely that. But as he spoke to like the 2 a.m. stuff, I definitely found myself doing laundry at 2-3 a.m. and just going to the gym at 3 a.m. whilst waiting for my laundry. But you have to go and get a key. Like you have to go sign out a key to use the gym, which didn't used to be the case when I was a fresher. So I could just be in and out. But now you've got to go arsehole and get a key, which can just be long. So, but it's a privilege, to be honest, to have washing machines and a gym where they are is also a massive advantage that other colleges don't have. So all the bad kind of comes with good, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's all free.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to pay for our laundry.
Or gym. So yeah.
Not all gym.
I don't really have any other things to say apart from ovens. A lot of the college accommodation doesn't have an oven in the kitchen. I don't know if it's like a health and safety thing. I'm not sure. So coming into the house I'm in now, which does have an oven, is a game changer because you can cook a lot of things on a hob. Don't get me wrong, but having an oven is just nice. So
Amazing. And that wraps up our the first ever Black Students panel. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking part. And I'd also like to say a very big thank you to Gaia, the John's Access Officer, who's sort of done a lot to put this all together. And we're all very appreciative. But yeah, thank you again for taking part, and I hope that everyone watching this takes away something. Do feel free to message, sorry, more, I said message, to email Gaia. Her email address is accessoffficer@jah.cam.ac.uk. Very long-winded, I'm sorry, but Cambridge email addresses be like that. Also, just to plug one or two access initiatives that are going on right now. AIM Cambridge is a new student initiative that I'm actually part of. I lead the social media team. So we're aimed at demystifying the Cambridge experience for students from underrepresented ethnic minorities, which Black students would fit into. So follow us on social media at AIM Cambridge. I think that's the same on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn if you're on there. Follow the ACS, which Tony here was the president of a couple of years back. And yeah, I think that's it from me. If anyone else wants to plug any access initiatives, do feel free to. If not, I'll end the call now. And once again, thank you very much for participating.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Make sure you apply.
good luck, everyone.
Good luck.